Yeah, today I'm going to present you some secrets about persuasion for enterprise software. And everything starts with Mickey. Mickey is a hardworking guy who is working with systems, and he has a mission. And his mission is to select, analyze some options to buy some enterprise software. Let's say human resources enterprise software. So what he's going to do, as you see, he's going to be in front of a computer, searching in internet for some options, visiting some websites, and trying to find the right solution for them. And then, on the other side of this story is where we are. We are the guys who are trying to sell enterprise software, trying to show him that we have the best of the best product for what he's looking for. So in order to persuade, I'm going to show you 3 secrets or weapons for that. The number one is, it's all about the language you use, the words you use. So I call it speak simple, concrete, and powerful. So it has 3 parts. To speak simple, you have to get rid of 3 enemies: jargon, buzzwords, and acronyms. And now we are going to see examples, and especially in this world of enterprise software. These are some jargon in enterprise software. Some are used in other fields as well, but these are like a slideware, a software that only exists in slides. No? We are selling software that not really exists, only slides. No? The killer app, evangelize. No, these are we use very often, and it's okay to use between us. But what happens when you go to another field? People who are not in software, well, they are not going to understand most probably most of this. So that's the thing. You can use jargon among your pals, colleagues, helps, but when you are out of your context, that's not a good idea. And sometimes you find your boss might be using one new of this jargon, and what is he repeating all this time? But I don't understand. Okay, you come to this website, unsuckit.com. You can write down that, for instance, what is boil the ocean? Who knows what is boil the ocean? Nobody knows what is boil the ocean. Some people use it a lot. Okay, you can go to this website, you'll get the explanation. Yeah, okay, don't boil the ocean. That's people say, don't boil the ocean. The second word is the buzzwords. Buzzwords are different words because these are words that are meant to try to impress. No? Try to impress. Sound like this, very bombastic. Bleeding edge, no? Probably you have heard about cutting edge. But cutting edge was not enough, so someone created bleeding edge, which is more dramatic. We have also zillennial. I don't know. Who is a zillennial here? Nobody understands this kind of stuff. But these are being used a lot. And the bad thing about this buzzword is that people who we respect and admire are using that, so it's contagious. So be careful that buzzwords are really contagious. And you will find that a lot in press releases especially. No? Mercury System wins 22 million orders for next generation airborne radar processing subsystems. So if you want to find some buzzwords, press releases, you'll find many there. And this also how sometimes you land to a page. Okay, tell me, someone recommend you this software. You go there, and this is how they define themselves. A next-gen network monitoring and management solution without the complexity and cost. Okay, very, very clear what you're doing, yeah? Oh, this is a quote by Diana Bucher, a communication expert. She put in Twitter some time ago, communicate with buzzwords, jargon, and cliches, and your message will fade from memory like the 8-track player. That is a product that I never seen. I don't know any of you have ever seen this product, but yeah, it has a very, very, very short lifetime. So it died because of these buzzwords. Well, acronyms is the other. Acronyms are useful, definitely are useful, because API is very common, but you're not going to repeat, of course, all the time, application programming interface, no, application programming interface. That's too much. It's okay to use the APIs, but of course, out of the context, people will not get it. There are many of these. People use a little bit too much of this. So acronyms are useful, but it's not good to overuse it or use it in the wrong context. And one example is what Elon Musk in SpaceX, he sent an angry email to the older employees about how one division of the company invented some acronyms, the other division invented other acronyms, so they cannot understand each other. So that was ludicrous. So he was right to be angry. So that was about having if you have a simple language, you already are ahead. So Mickey is going to understand you better if you speak a simple language. Now, the other thing to improve your language is being concrete. And what is that? I know how many of you have studied engineering science or have done some research in their life. I think many of you. And you might be familiar with this. The abstract. No? You write your thesis, and the first thing you have to show is the abstract. No? And many people, including myself, have learned to write professionally in this style. So then you graduate, go to the industry, and you write in this style. So how you communicate in this style of abstract. So it's a bit of change of mindset, how to say things in concrete terms. Some examples, compared to the previous examples I showed, Twilio for enterprise, they have a communication software. They define in a more simpler way a communication platform to reach every customer anywhere. Asana, make more time for the work that matters most. Very concrete, they are talking about a work management platform. The teams used to say focus on the goals, project, and daily tasks, the grow business. They are using a concrete language. Oh, this is from Futurice. I found something very, very cool. I like it. So from Aito, that's the Futurice company, make your software smarter this week. These guys are talking about machine learning, right? But the way it's explained is very simple. So you get the idea what they are doing. So that's the good thing when you are concrete. And the three part for your language is about being powerful. And so let's pay attention about just this example. No? Uninspiring conference talks are caused by disregard of presentation software skills. Okay, so what's wrong with this phrase? When I hear something like that, I start feeling a bit of headache. You know, it's kind of not so easy to read. One thing is that it's still abstract. But what else besides being abstract makes this difficult to read? Yes. What else? Okay. It's using the passive. He said, uninspiring conference talks are caused by, it's passive, disregard of presentation software skills. No? So people usually don't speak like that, but write like that very often. And that's what you read when you go to a website. So what about you say this? Spend 1 hour a week learning your presentation software deeper, and your next talk will stand out of all conference speakers. No? Spend 1 hour a week. Active voice. You can feel it's easier to get the idea what it's talking about. Some good examples is a company I found, Spiceworks. They said, understand the technology needs and challenges of your business, manage your IT inventory, discover the technologies in use within your organization. Also, the active voice helps to understand easily. This is from Pipedrive, from our neighbors here in Estonia. Make sales success inevitable. Also, simple and active voice. We go now to the second part, that is persuade metaphors. And Michael gave nice examples. I like that. And we show another examples about metaphors. And this gets more creative. No? You now have a simple language. People will understand you better with simple language. And now, persuade with metaphors. So I'll show you some examples. Okay, how do we define metaphors? There are many ways. I would say that it's a concept. You want to explain a concept or something that is, it might be difficult per se to understand, to explain. That's why you use a metaphor. You express it in visual language that is not at all what the literal meaning has. Now, visual language, that's the key thing in metaphors. One example, Mikko Hipponen, he spoke at TEDx Brussels like 4 years ago already. He was talking about surveillance, nation-state surveillance that was relatively new that it's so big. And he uses this metaphor, the internet is on fire. And what it means on fire means that there is all this surveillance and we have to act today. That's the metaphor for on fire. Because what would you do if your house is on fire? Get out immediately, right? It's not that you are going to have some tea, right? So you act immediately. That's the point. Being on fire, act immediately. And that metaphor can be applied in other aspects. This is a good one. There's a video. It's a company that doesn't exist anymore. Well, has a different name. Doesn't exist like EDS. It's not so clear in this photo, but you see there's an airplane, and it's flying. It's in the sky, and these guys you see that they are building the airplane, building airplanes in the sky. And what the company was doing is making software, but software that is running, millions of people using the software, and the company is building in this software that is being used. Building airplanes in the sky. That's very, very good metaphor. Can be used in enterprise software. This is from Citrix. From Citrix, they talk about how to use design and inspire delight in their customers. They said, giving your user a great experience over and over is the best way to ignite fireworks in their hearts. No, as you see, is the good experience. The user is satisfied, is happy with your software, with your product. Ignites fireworks in their heart. And this is pretty clear that there's nothing literal with that. So there are no fireworks in their heart. It's completely, we are connecting pyrotechnics, something not related at all with the feeling. Really good metaphor as well. This is also a really good one, a company called Teradata, that created a series of stories and videos, and they created this concept of the data wasteland. These guys who are in the photo, they are data analysts, a team of data analysts that are trying to analyze data. There's so much data, it's huge, but as they don't have the right tools, it's a wasteland. There's a lot of stuff, but it's useless. And that's a metaphor. Without the right tool to analyze your data, you are in the middle of a huge data wasteland. This is a quote from Mark Binoff, CEO of Salesforce, that he said that he spent a lot of time creating metaphors in order to explain what they do. And one example from him that is a bit old at this point, he said that when he created App Exchange was introduced as the eBay of enterprise software, no? Because eBay was the only closest thing to explain at that time. To summarize about metaphors, why they are useful, because they help you to simplify complex concepts. That's the reason why you would use them. Connecting this new concept to something that is already familiar to your audience, something is already familiar. And use visual language that is easier to remember. And a couple of best practices about using metaphors is you connect two very distant fields, no? Like software and pyrotechnics. No? They are very distant, but your audience, your specific audience, has to be familiar with this other distant field. What happens if you talk about software in Finland, and the metaphor is related to cricket, a sport that is not popular at all here. It might be a good metaphor, but here people just don't get it, and it's useful. That's why you need to have these very distant fields, but both has to be very familiar to your specific audience. So that's very important. And a good bit of advice is every time you hear a good metaphor, someone speaking, like today Michael, or you read in a newspaper, But write it down because you're going to forget it, and it can be very useful to explain things, or can give you the idea to create your own metaphors. And the last one is become a storyteller. This quite trendy, talking about storytelling. I will give you, again, some specific examples for our field. This was a really good example. Let's start with some examples. This was from Cisco, like 4 years ago, when John Chambers, who used to be the CEO for Cisco almost 2 decades, he left to work part-time in the board. So he left the CEO role, and he had this keynote in which he was talking many things. But towards the end of this keynote, he invited to the stage to Jim Grubb. Jim Grubb has been the chief demonstration officer for Cisco, also for 1 decade at least. So they were doing product demonstration on stage many times together. And when they met, Jim Grubb makes a joke about, okay, now that you are going to retire, you need a city pass for your public transportation. And after a joke, they go to this city officer, and they are going to apply the city pass for John. So they go, they start talking with the guy. He said, okay, you need these documents. And suddenly, Jim shows an app, City Pass app, in which you can do all the steps required. You can collect all the papers, driver license, social security card, etc. You submit this document electronically. You can take a photo of John, and you can finally pay electronically. So you do everything electronically with a mobile app. And at the end, the guy, the city officer, is completely surprised. And this show in a story how all these complex technologies that are behind Cisco can be used together. And only after the story, they show the boring slide. They show the details. They show the details of the technology, what are my products, the technologies behind, blah, blah, blah. But that's it. They show first the story, at the end the boring slide. But what most of people do are the opposite. They do the boring slide first, and end of story. So that's an excellent way to use stories. Another different kind of story is from Canva, canva.com, in which these 3 guys are the founders of Canva, a company that now its valuation is more than 1 billion, very successful company. And Menali Perkins, the CEO, has told many times the story of how when she had around 19-year-old, she was studying communication. She had to learn design tools such as Photoshop, InDesign, and was so difficult. She had to teach their classmates. And she has this idea that we should create a tool that is really easy. At least for easy tasks, you should be able to do quickly things. And combine this with the advent of web technologies. And she had this vision. But when she started creating this company and making it grow, she found many obstacles, of course, a bumpy road, in which, for instance, she said that since the first time she met the very first venture capital investor, until the first time she got some money from one of these guys, it was 3 years. 3 years of trying hard, improving the product, but nothing big happened until the end that they managed to get several investors and do a really extraordinary product. And the vision is here, design anything. So very simple way, design anything, publish anywhere. That's a combination with the web technologies that allow you to publish immediately now, like in social media. And one more is Ben Wellington from 2 Sigma. He's a data analyst. And he's based on New York, and he created a blog called I Quant New York. New York City, has Helsinki, many other cities, publish available data about traffic, about waste management, etc. There's a lot of data that is just public. You can do many things with that, processing this data. So he, in his free time, he was processing this data and created this blog, iQuant New York, and start telling, for instance, the story of how what are the places in New York where there are more car accidents, more fines, etc. He wrote about that, made analysis, data analysis, and wrote, okay, this is interesting, people to know. And he was then, at first, surprised that the blog became so popular. And the reason the blog became so popular is because he had been doing before improvisation comedy. So he used some of these storytelling skills to put them in the blog post. No? So using a story that is easy to understand in all this blog posts, and that became very successful without being him the only blogger who was doing this kind of stuff, but he was outstanding in that sense. And now he's known as a data storyteller. So another great example of using storytelling, in this case for presenting data. So what are good types of stories you need? Because there are different types of stories, as you notice, that you will need for enterprise software or this kind of business. The real user stories, these are typical in many companies collect testimonials, for instance, that are there on the website, on a blog post, etc. But it's good that we know how to tell these stories also. Now, I talk about this specific customer. We'll be able to tell in a sales meeting, for instance, or when I met in a social event, I talk face-to-face, I will be able to tell the story. You know? The other is the creator story. That's the one by Melanie Perkins, how he created this product. Fictitious stories like the very first with Cisco. No, this guy they need a city pass, they go to the city officer. This is a fictitious story, but well done is very powerful to get the points. And finally, some best practices. Transform facts about people into stories like Ben Wellington. A lot of data, huge amount of data, creating stories, very entertaining blog posts. Add dialogue to your narrative. For instance, in the case of Cisco, these guys, you can say, okay, so I came with Jim Grubb. We go to the city officers. We run the app, and the first reaction of this city officer was, unbelievable, but I'm going to lose my job because of this. So adding this dialogue, that every time you explain things, you tell stories, is also much easier to people to imagine what you are talking about. And finally, use some framework, some basic frameworks. Some of you might have heard of the hero's journey that is used even in Hollywood. It has several steps. You can find that. But at least 3 elements in any story would be present. The first is the character. The character, for instance, in Canva, Melanie Perkins, a student, 19-year-old, studying communication in Australia. Then comes the struggle, second element, struggle. No? She wants to find funding, but struggle 3 years, doesn't get any investor. And then comes like the solution, the introspection that, okay, now we are a $1 billion company, and etc. These 3 elements at least are classic and essentially in any story. So again, to reiterate, these are the 3 about the language. Speak simple, concrete, and powerful. Just with your words, you will make much easier to persuade someone if you use better words. Create metaphors. No? Sometimes you bring something to the stage to explain a metaphor. Sometimes it's very visual. But the idea is that people will imagine in their minds. Imagine the firework in their heart. Imagine a wasteland, etc. And finally, become a storyteller. Be ready to tell stories about your company, about yourself, all the time, anytime you speak. So if you use these 3 persuasion secrets, well, it's going to be your time to persuade Mickey, and hopefully he's going to choose your product.